Good morning, good morning, good morning. Today, AM Hustle by your hustling godfather. It's going to be very, very sobering. It's going to be a different kind of AM hustle. What we're going to talk about is why we protect the people that harm us. Got a lot to unpack here. We've got a lot to talk about. The other day, I got a message from someone who was just like, I was watching your live stream, and yeah, your mother did these bad things, and yeah, she filed bankruptcy, but she's dead and gone. Let it go. And this video, this AM Hustle, is a response to that because um, why do we as people protect people that harm us? And he went on with this whole leather and stuff, and time heals all wounds and everything. One of the reasons that so many people cannot be successful is they have not dealt with the garbage that people who have hurt them have perpetuated on them. One of the biggest reasons, you've got grown people out here who are upset at something that their mother, their father, or the mean kids in high school did to them many, many decades ago. And it is keeping them from moving on. It is keeping them from being the best version of themselves because they don't want to deal with those issues. Like, I have a friend, his mother was extremely abusive. And at time they started getting along much better as an adult. And he could just never get into a good relationship. He was always picking women who acted like his mother. I was just like, well, this one's just like the last one. She's just a little less crazy. So he kept getting in all these bad relationships, getting in all of these harmful, crazy relationships. Because one of the things he didn't understand, and this is something that I went through after my divorce, after all that time in the boarding house, I went to counseling. And I'm here to tell you, counseling is one of the best things that you can do. Counseling is one of the most critical things you can do because you'll talk to someone who is trained in helping you navigate all of those feelings and emotions. And why do we protect the people that harm us? Why do we protect these people? We're taught to protect them. Our society has a hard time holding women accountable. That's really starting to change. These teachers who have sex with these little boys are going to jail. So we're starting as a society to hold women accountable because this thing with women and young boys, this ain't nothing new. This has been going on for decades. It's just typically the people who engaged in this type of stuff kept quiet. They didn't really talk about it. Now, if a teacher has sex with a kid, he's going to tell all of his boys, he's going to show them pictures on his cell phone, and then word's going to get out. So, we're taught as a society to protect people who harm us because the people who harm us have done good things for us at some point. This is why we're taught that it is bad to push back on someone who loves you, who does something to you, who is harmful to you. We're taught that we in turn become bad people by holding these folks accountable. Now, ain't that a mind flip? That we, the harmed, are taught not to hold the people who perpetuate harm and damage to us, we're taught not to hold them accountable if they're a family member. Now, if they're a stranger, we're taught to open a can of whoop ass on them. If it's a stranger, that's what you're taught to do. But if it's family, you gotta keep that to yourself. You gotta deal with that. You gotta suck it up. You gotta suck it up, man. One of the things, you know what? I gotta go do something real quick. I will be back because I'm getting ready to hold on a second. All right, I'm back. We're taught, hold on. All right. We're taught that we need to allow people who harm us to keep harming us. I want you to really think about this, because here is one of the situations with success. If you're brought up in a bad situation, you may personally feel that you do not deserve to be successful. You may have this level of self-loathing. You may have a myriad of bad habits based upon the damage that was done to you. Because this person who sent me this letter, they didn't understand. Like, my mother was extremely verbally abusive. She used to tell me, you ain't gonna grow up to be nothing. You ain't gonna grow up to be shit. She would be getting a furious state and speak to me like this. Now, many of you have seen mothers speak to their children like that, in a very angry, in a very hostile tone. And one of the things that I did was, when I was in a situation to leave, I left. I got on. I went on with my life. And thank you, Mr. G, for the $5 super chat. I believe in that, because once again, we're taught to endure. Let me give you an example. And this should go on disruptive mail, but it's going to fit in here Paul Brown, I will agree with you 100%. I was dating this chick that had an amazing family, and her mother and I used to talk about my mother, and she just simply could not understand because she wasn't that type of chick. She could not understand. She was just like, I don't understand how a mother would do that or behave that way or act that way. They will never, you can't explain it to them because you have to look at the pathology of the family. I dated this girl, all her aunts were close. They used to put on these amazing cookouts. I mean, they would be in the kitchen, pots. There was nothing but love. They supported each other. And as far as I'm concerned, they still do. And once you come from a bad family and you're in the presence of someone with an amazing family, the difference is like night and day. You just sitting there like, we never did this. My mother never spoke to me like that. It is so hard from people with good families to understand how someone can still come from have such a bad family. It is so hard for them to wrap their heads around it because this letter, because this was just killing me because this is what happened. My mother filed bankruptcy 3 times. My mother was bad with money. My mother was verbally abusive. And I talk about this to give you guys freedom and license to look at your own situations because I don't care if you're your mama, I don't care if it's your daddy. If they're abusing you, you need to remove yourself from the situation. You need to get on. You need to be accountable for yourself. And like one of the reasons that, when I was in therapy, we talked about my mother. We talked about essentially the damage, the abuse that was done. We talked about all of this because one of the things that happens is you're programmed by the damage. You can become programmed by the damage. And one of the things that happened to me is I fought back. Even as a young child, I had the presence awareness of mind to know that this was wrong. And I fought back. And once I was of age, I left. But some of the programming was done. Here was a person who had damaged me. Here was a person who was abusive. And I joined the military, and one of the first things that she wanted was for me to create an allotment for her. And I did it. It was $100 a month. So from the rift, I was sending money home to someone who abused me because I was taught, and here's where we're gonna part ways, some of you, there ain't nothing more important than family. I want to give you a stipulation for that. There's nothing more important than good family. And I have had the privilege through dating to be with women who've had amazing families. And the difference is just so incredible between a bad family and an amazing family. Like the one chick I was dating, her mother was just amazing. Her mother was just awesome. Her mother took it upon herself to get multiple jobs, to support her daughters. And in turn, this gave her daughters room to be successful. And this is what an amazing parent does. An amazing parent will take all of the hits. An amazing parent, because I was just used to sit there, and this is something else too. You date someone with an amazing family and you treat that girl good, that amazing family will adopt you. I've been adopted and accepted into multiple families. I was dating this chick, and her father was just, he loved me to death. Her mother was you know, these certain things that happened. And I got to learn how a good family operates. I got to learn how amazing people treat each other. Because I grew up in an environment that was devoid of that. My mother never even hugged me. Many of you are in that same situation where you're an adult, you were raised in a situation where you just were not treated well. You were raised in a situation where you were not loved and adored and taken care of. And it leaves this hunger. And once again, I was in therapy. We talked about all this stuff. We actually, hold on a second. We talked about this. We talked about this, and it helped so much. Another thing that I used to do was keep a journal. And the journal was so important because in terms of being successful, when people talk about someone has baggage, and baggage weighs you down, and baggage can keep you from going forward. One of the things that I unpacked, because, when I was in that boarding house and I was in this bad situation, and after coming out of an abusive marriage, I was mentally a wreck. I was mentally not fit for a relationship, and I wasn't fit for success. And there are many of you out here who are trying to go out here and be successful with all of this negative baggage. And it's going to hold you back. It's going to be a problem. And also with the MGTOW men. A lot of MGTOW red pill men have been abused, harmed, and they don't really understand the power of being brought up in a bad relationship. They don't understand that when you have abusive, harmful parents, like with the lower economic class, there is a lot of abuse. There's a lot of physical abuse. There's a lot of mental abuse. And these kids are programmed for failure. You see your mom, like if your mom or dad does drugs in front of you, that is a form of abuse. You see your mom sitting there tying off, shooting up, that's a form of abuse. That is a form of abuse, man. And you get many of these kids who are in these situations who don't understand because that's mom, that's dad. I love them, but they're harming you daily. And once again, we're in a situation that you have, and in the black community, dysfunction is celebrated. Well, that's how Nene is. versus nay 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 is a dysfunctional mother. Like I was talking to my uncle Martin after my mother died, and he was like, yeah, she was like this, but she paid her debt to society. She's gone, and he didn't want to talk about it anymore. We keep protecting these people, and we keep protecting these legacies of harm. Once again, let's talk about how my story. Like this chick, she got pregnant, and we were supposed to be raising our child together here in Georgia. She was also damaged by her pathological dysfunctional mother, and in turn she internalized that damage, and she became her mother, which wasn't going to work with a dude like me, because they needed weak men. They needed weak men to be with. They needed to be with men who would not stand up. One of the things, all right, Mr. G, I already mentioned that, but once again, thanks for the $5 super chat. I had to walk away from my mother 2 years ago because of her toxic behavior. This Stockholm syndrome is practiced among black folks. Paul Brown, if someone had a bad parent, they just, you can't explain. I remember talking to this chick's mother, and she was just like, why don't you and your mother get along? She just simply could not understand. She could not understand it. Mr. G, my girlfriend has an amazing family. I see the difference. I mean, it's like, man, these people are so happy, and they're so warm, and they're so kind to each other. It just literally blows your mind. Really said, well, as a child, honestly believed that my mother hated me. Wow. Johnny Walton, that is a form of abuse when you're telling your children that they're never going to account to anything. John H., my mother still talks down to me at the age of 30. Really said, well, if I'm married with kids now, sometimes I still remember and get a little depressed. I mean, you were a child. It is hard to not internalize that, because when you are a child, your mother, your father is the center of your universe. They're your be-all. They're your everything. And you are a child. You are an unprogrammed organic being. You don't know any better because you're a child and your mind is still growing. So, I mean, it is, we don't talk about this because, as the title of this AM Hustle says, why we protect the people that hurt us. Because if it's your mother, and this is one of the reasons that a lot of women want someone that treats their mother well. And I'm going to unpack that. Because a lot of women, I'm going to tell this story. I was in a situation where I had 3 women. And one of the women who wanted to be number one got into my voicemail system, and she emailed everybody that was in my voicemail system. And the women started saying, hey, I don't want any drama. The women started backing away from me because they knew that this chick was crazy. Women know that some women can be absolutely batshit crazy. They know this, and they run from it. They know this. So essentially, when a woman is so firm that I want a man that treats his mother well, she wants to be with someone that she knows that she can abuse and is still going to stand up and respect her. One of the lessons that we as men are taught is never to put our hands on women, which is not a bad thing. But we're also taught to endure abuse by women. I don't care what she does. You should never put your hands on a woman. So if she hits you, she spits on you, she does whatever, that's fine. Endure, but never put your hands on the woman. We're taught to endure abuse. I remember, and I brought this story up before, there was this rapper dude, and he was dating this chick, and her mother ran over his foot, broke his foot. He had to go to the hospital. He had to get a cast, spend money, and he's like, well, I didn't want to get her in trouble because I ain't no punk. Did y'all hear what I said? I don't want to get her in trouble because I ain't no punk. This is, we as men are firmly indoctrinated to endure abuse. Mr. Big, my whole family was toxic, save for one cousin. It's probably why we're close and only people in the family escape poverty and be my cousin and I. Paul Brown, my mother is a piece of crap and she knows her my woman is toxic, never tells her she loves her, downs every chance she gets, but she continues to try to love her mom. She's taught that's what she's supposed to do because it's mom. Mom can do no wrong. Mom can pee on your head every morning and you're supposed to do that. Seeing it's hard to divorce yourself from a bad family. They will emotionally abuse you to make you believe you owe them and should pay for their responsibility. Absolutely. Mr. Big, it took a lot of pain and losses before I grew a pair and left them behind, though. My cousin was more outspoken. He told his own mother he didn't owe her a damn thing when she demanded money. Paul, damage is definitely done. It's been a problem in our relationship. Even today, I feel responsible for my family financially. It's a daily mental battle. Remember, there's nothing more important than good relationship. Paul Brown, family isn't always blood relatives. John H., I'm glad I'm not the only one that feels this way. Well, one of the reasons I'm having this conversation, because that letter, that message struck me as odd because this person was encouraging me not to share valuable information with the tribe. This is the type of stuff, because let me tell you what happened to me. Because I fell into that state of living in a boarding house. Then I went out and got counseling. And the counseling asked me this crazy question one day. She's like, so what was your relationship was like with your mother? And I had to sit back and I had to think about it. And I said, well, I said it was tolerable. That was my exact statement. It was tolerable. And we unpacked it. And I started to tell her all the stuff that happened to me. And the counselor was like, you were abused. And abused for years. Abused for years. And this is the state of many people from the lower economic class and some middle class and some rich people, where they've had a toxic parent that abused them for years. Ready, Set, Wealth, my wife is amazing. It's full of love and hugs and encouragement. I was blown away. Once you come from a bad family and you're in the presence of a big family, it's a mind fuck. You're like, who are these aliens that love and support each other? Who are these people? Thank you, Mr. G. Lewis Lemons, forget that noise. Because I would have been successful earlier if it wasn't for the abuse. So I don't agree with that. I'm not going to honor my mother, someone who abused me, and I will continue to speak out and talk about what went down, how it went down, how it impacted me, and more importantly, the solution that got me out of that bad programming. See, once again, this is such a powerful narrative. How you, regardless of what mom does, you should protect her. Regardless, you got men who are being abused by their ex-wives, and it's usually the new girlfriend who's like, "You need to go to court. You need to do this. You need to do this," because they know that they're being abused and played. Mr. Big, some people learn what they want to be from family, some people learn what they don't want to be. That was the story of my life. Mr. G, I've been in counseling over a year. Gentlemen, if you can afford it, get help. Mr. Big, brother, I hit home. My mother was a heroin addict. This is the lower, one of the reasons that people stay in the lower economic strata is abuse, bad programming, bad habits that no one wants to really talk about. I have been saying on this channel for years that one of the reasons that middle class, kids from middle class to upper middle class black parents fall into poverty is this keeping it hood, keeping it real to relate with the poor ghetto brethren. I saw an article the other day that was talking about all of these white women who are trying to be black, and they're stealing style points and stuff from poor black women. And sure, there may be some white women who are pulling that, but the overwhelming majority of white women are not trying to be black. They ain't even thinking about being black. It ain't even on their radar. Paul Brown, they think being parents gives them the green light to abuse and treat their kids badly. Absolutely. Denomas, it's like what you said last night, accountability. If we hold others accountable, we in turn have to hold ourselves accountable and own up to what we did or didn't do. Many people are scared of that. Absolutely. Because when I was with my counselor and we were talking about the situation, and I was like, and she was like, how'd that make you feel? I said, unloved, uncared for. And at that moment, I got really emotional and silent because we had unpacked that truth. We had unpacked that situation. We had set up where, because that breakthrough in that moment, it was like all of this truth flooded into this space where there was confusion and there was doubt. And I was dealing with truth for the first time. I was dealing with the pain for the first time. And literally 4 weeks later, I went out, and I remember, because my mind was clear and I could focus. And this is when I found Earl Nightingale. And this is when I got the power of the subconscious mind. Because my first 18 months in that boarding house, I was a hot mess. I was like, how did I get here? Why did this happen to me? And I look back at situations where, due to the programming, I sought out a wife that was very much like my mother. My ex-wife was extremely abusive. And, I was a gregarious kind of guy. I remember one time she was pregnant and we were living in these apartments and there was a fire and everybody was outside. So I was getting ready to go outside and she said, I don't want you to go outside. It's like, why? She's like, I'm scared. She did not want me to meet new people because that could mess up her power base. She didn't want me to meet new people. She didn't want me to go out and explore. She didn't want me to, I remember one time her flock came over, and there was a member of her flock that we just kind of gelled, and we got along very fine. That chick never came over again. Never came over again. Nathan Harris' mom told me she was only required to keep me till I was 16. Damn, that's abusive. Paul Brown, thanks for a $10 super chat. Ray said, well, it's crazy how dad hurt us as kids too, but it's the moms that hurt us the deepest. Mr. Big, that's because men are mostly physical, women mental and emotional. Dad will beat you and call you worthless. Mom will beat you and list the reasons why you're worthless. So sad, but so true. Paul Brown, I speak on how effed up her mom and family is, and they've lied and tried to end our relationship for years. Last year, her mom told her the family doesn't like the new you. What's up, Black Caesar? Anthony Bolton. That's why I consider myself very lucky, because my mom and dad made life easy for me and my two brothers. Also saw some of my friends treat them like shit, and they flocked to my mom. Christina Marie, thank you for sharing this. My family was very dysfunctional. I'm relieved until I was strong enough to acknowledge it. My dad was abusive and drew the same energy in relationships. Jabras, most companies have EAP benefits to provide services like counseling. Use your resources, people. New people may run your program and bend the bartender. That was the problem. That was the problem. She didn't want me to meet new people. Jessica Hip, yep, moms have a deeper bond. It's only natural. That's why wives and mothers need to be cared for well. They create and raise the next generation. I will agree with that. So this in turn, because let's talk about the self-perpetuating cycle of the lower economic class. So your mom and dad are abusive and poor, and your inheritance from them is not only what they don't give you, it's also what they do give you. And they give you the legacy of dysfunction. And this cycle repeats itself over and over again. I was with this chick who came from a dysfunctional background, and I was programming her to be accountable. And once her family got wind of that, they were like, no, 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 no. Like someone said, they didn't like the new her. They could not be part of that situation. They couldn't get down with the new get down. And this is one of the reasons, because when I was going through my counseling, literally 4 weeks after that is when I got on this track of success. Because all of the confusion, because essentially when your mother tells you you ain't shit, that penetrates. That gets deep into your soul. And it also explained why, like, I would try stuff and it wouldn't work out, because I had those little seeds of doubt. And then one of the things I did as I became an adult and I started becoming successful, I limited my mother's access to me. I didn't go visit her. I didn't pay a lot of attention to her. I would visit her like literally twice a year. And I was in Atlanta and she was in Birmingham. And it was just like, that was about as much as I could tolerate. And after 2 or 3 hours, I had to go. And in turn, looking at her programming, my grandfather killed himself. which, at the time, this was the 50s. He was depressed, but black folks don't get counseling. Just pray on it. Put the hands on it. And that's why he ended up the way that he did. He ended up killing himself, and then that messed her up, and then she went buck wild. And I remember my mother and my grandmother used to have these fights because my grandmother was trying to put my mother on the right path, and my mother wasn't having it. She wasn't having it. Christina Marie, my dad was good for saying, you ain't shit, you ain't never been shit, you ain't never going to be shit. But I was considered too sensitive because of how it hurt. That was abuse. And this is something I say, if you have children, never ever speak to your children that way. Never ever. Because it's going to wound them. It's going to harm them. And when you see these ghetto mothers cussing out their 2, their 3, their 4, their 5-year-old children, and people shake their head, and that's a shame, but nobody really does anything because they don't want to be involved. They don't want to be part of that madness. And we're taught to protect these people who harm our mental state of mind, who harm our souls, who emotionally damage us. And I get this message, and someone tried it in the comments, like, honor thy mother, regardless of what she does. And one of the reasons that I became strong isn't because of I think I would have been here much earlier if it wasn't for the damage and the negative protocols of dealing with toxic people, i.e. my mother and ex-wife. Because on my Facebook page, I became more successful after my divorce. Way more successful. I mean, my mom used to say the similar stuff to me, Romero. That almost verbatim was the same thing. Pretty much, Paul Brown, you got to limit yourself around these people. Mo Grizzly, that's because too many women with kids destroying the future. It's a problem. It is a problem. This is so true. I hate this happened to you. I suffered abuse also from my mother. It's a daily grind to get my mind back by reprogramming my mind for success. And that's the key. You have to replace all of that garbage with new programming. Stephen Eason, we have to speak life into children. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because one of the things that happens, just kids, I had to honor my mother by getting away from her. I was depressed around her. You don't realize the impact until after. She constantly told me I couldn't do things. It was limiting my own thinking. That was toxic programming. What's up, Aaron? It's crazy when people say that. They've really just seen themselves in their child and how they wasted their lives or missed opportunities and turning and saying, I'm not shit, never been shit, and won't be shit. I mean, yeah. What's up, Tracy? Black Caesar, I grew up hearing many of my childhood friends' mothers telling them, you ain't shit just like your daddy to their sons. But the real question is, why did they have sex if he wasn't? Because he was the shit. That's why I had sex with him. We can reach these youngs by being honest with them. Mo Grizzly, that's a fact. I was talking to a lady yesterday that has one child by a guy that has 3 babies' mothers. Damn. Cameron, I haven't spoken to my mother in a year now, and her husband came on to me when I told her she stopped speaking to me and distanced herself for 3 months. She told her family members that I was lying. Wow. That is a common paradigm in many little girls' lives. All right, Christina Marie. Glad to hear that helped you. We got to speak about this stuff, and we got to talk about it, and we got to dive into it because this negative pathology is keeping you from being successful. One of my friends is Darryl Eves, you know, the YouTube guy. And Darryl has this amazing family. He has this amazing relationship with his brothers and his father and mother and everything. And Darryl is a multi-millionaire several times over. You see him, he's wearing this black YouTube shirt. He's a humble guy. You have no clue to how much money this guy makes. I mean, Darryl makes bank. I'm talking millions of dollars per month. And you would never know it by the way he acts. And one of the reasons that he was successful is he was raised right. No, we don't have to worry about COPPA. They're only worried about kids under 13. But this is one of the reasons that the lower class stays the lower class. Like Camet T. That's a big problem with a lot of girls where dad or the stepdad has come on to the child. The child says something, and the mother, because she is worried about the disruption of economics, does not believe the child because she's going to go with the economics. And this creates a rift between her and the child because the mother should be protecting her child. I remember watching this movie. It was an old movie. I don't know the name of it. But this woman was living with this guy, and he came to her child. And the child said, he touched me. And the next day, that woman left. She was out of there. I mean, a good mother will do things like that. Mia Gotcha Cookie. What's the definition of raised right? Raised in a house full of love and support, where you're not abused, where your parents don't talk to you like you've done something wrong. You are raised in an environment of support. You are taken care of. You are loved. You are treated up. I mean, you're raised with love. You're raised with kindness. You're taught values. It's a big difference between being raised right and being abused. Black Caesar, Uncle G was brutal in the projects because I heard some of these same moms telling my friends' sisters, don't come back in this house with a wet ass and no money, and these girls were only teens. Dysfunctional pathologies. I remember I used to work with this girl named Mary Ramble. And Mary was like, always say, you sitting on your moneymaker. And, you know, Mary was a kind of a wild card at times. I don't even know what happened to her. But there's something that happened because she had talked about how her boyfriend abused her, and then I actually said something about it. Then he came to talk to me about it. Paul Brown, my woman does hair and hula hoop lessons as a hustle, and her mom always tells her, you're not licensed, going to get in trouble, don't want to see your daughter be better than her. And this is also something that happens to a lot of girls. A girl will have a certain situation, and her mother will become jealous of her daughter and sabotage this kid. She will wound her self-esteem. She will trip her up, and she will constantly sabotage this child. I mean, once again, once I got out of there, Quinton Jackson, in my case, I was raised in an environment full of love and a church full of love. Only found out in the last 2 years that it was all a facade. My dad really loved my mom and my brothers. It was a lie. Really? What did your dad do? That's deep. The old wet pussy and dry purse don't match. That's what old hookers told younger women. I mean, the abuse is significant. The abuse is incredible. But we're taught to love and support these people. And because of the dysfunctional pathological training, we do. Because, that message just really irked me. It's like, you shouldn't talk about your mom this way. You should let it be. And I'm here to help break the cycle by talking about it. Because once we start talking about it, because I remember years ago I was talking when I did Uber. If for those of you who don't know, I did Uber for about 6 weeks to write a book about Uber, and the conclusion I came up was Uber was just a good hustle. It was not a way to really make a lot of money, and history has borne that out. I remember I had this passenger, and we were having this conversation, and this is what he said. He said, "Yeah, I remember I was mad at my dad for all these years because we wanted some money for basketball, and I talked to my dad, and my dad said, I gave your mother the money. And the mother took their basketball money. And he sat back there in the back seat hot for about 2-3 minutes as he remembered that he could not play basketball because his mom took the basketball money. As a parent, it is your job to protect, to provide. It is not your job to live off your kids. I know Mo Gloriously. Kia Green. Black families need to really talk about being molested and while Uncle Reckless look at their daughter in a weird way. This really has a hurtful thing that happened, and it really does a number on a person. Absolutely. Molestation and incest is a big problem that no one really wants to talk about because they don't want to hold the people accountable. Black Caesar. As a kid, I would be sitting on the couch waiting for them so we can go outside. It's sad, but a lot of those friends ended up in jail by selling drugs and all sorts of criminal activity. Black Caesar. You understood as a kid that the way that their parents were speaking to them was wrong. And look at what happened to them. Being the bartender, or if a kid feels weird about being alone with a relative, listen. Quinton Jackson, he was supporting other families and women while we were struggling growing up. He had affairs with his mentees in the church. I caught him out on it. He doesn't talk to me. The church banned me. Was your father the pastor? That sounds like some reverend type action. Paul Brown, that she's your mother no matter what is bullshit. Many mothers mess up money sent by the fathers. Here's something else too. Speaking of mothers who are on child support, typically after child support ends, I was assuming, Quentin, typically after child support ends, many mothers end up in poverty. After child support ends, the kid's gone. Why they ended up in poverty? They got used to getting that money. Man, Quentin, that's brutal, man. I'm really sorry to hear that. That is really, really brutal. But once again, this is why I'm having this live stream and I'm touching this subject and talking about it. Is we as people have to be accountable, and once you start to be accountable to yourself and you start to unpack these things, you will begin to grow as a person. And then your opportunity to be successful exponentially expands. You will be able to look back and you will be able to grow and you will be able to become successful and you will be able to have a certain understanding. You will, because, I mean, one of the best things I ever did was go to therapy. And a lot of people need to go to therapy, but they won't do it because they're afraid of what's going to be unpacked. Because many people, and this happens, a lot of people have bad parents. And as their parents get older, the parents get kinder, gentler, and they build some type of relationship, but those bad feelings are still there. Black Caesar, that's actually a good point, because one of the things is so many men are abused by their mothers, then in turn it makes it easier for them to be abused by their wives. Once again, as I touched on earlier, this is one of the reasons that so many women want to make sure that you have a good relationship with your mother, regardless of what your mother did to you, so they can abuse you. I had a situation where this girl was just like, well, you should get your mother an iPad, just because she was my mother. And once again, I've always been this kind of person. How you treat me determines how I treat you. And I wasn't thinking about buying my mother an iPad and all this other stuff. Because I remember the damage, I remember the emotional abuse, I remember all of this stuff. And I remember what I had to go through to heal myself. And self healing and going through the process of discovering this stuff, unearthing it, and digging in and doing certain, because I literally changed as a person after going through counseling and then getting on my self education program. And this is something that's really wild because I came from that environment and I was able to always find good girlfriends with amazing families. It was just like that, we were magnets and we just came together. And I don't know if this was just for an opportunity for me to see how an amazing family works. Patrick, that's why I don't talk money with my mother. Whenever I make more, she wants more. That's funny. Ben the bartender, hell yeah, my mom was one of the coolest grandparents I ever met. I'm saying she wasn't like that when I was growing up. That's wild, man. What's up, Jay Preston? Thanks for the $5 super chat. You have these situations because once again, this is one of the reasons that a lot of men cannot have relationships because of the abuse that was perpetuated by their mother. And going back to fraud, so you hate your mother. This is not a race thing. There's a lot of white people who went through the same abuse. The pathology of the lower economic classes is the same regardless of race, religion, or culture. Like right now, we have a system of dysfunctioning that's happening in San Francisco. We have grown people who are literally taking dumps in grocery stores because they're mentally messed up. Paul Brown, I agree. I often wonder what athletes like Kevin Durant, LeBron James, and other male athletes had to endure from their mother before their fame and fortune. There was this one guy. He was a top five college, high school athlete, and his mother wanted him to go to LSU, and he chose Alabama. And when they were there signing, she clowned because he didn't go to LSU. I can only imagine what this young man went through. But once again, This is the pathology that you see. It is supported greatly by the NFL. This is why you have men in the NFL wearing pink cleats, pink socks for breast cancer, because the NFL wants to woo these pathological, dysfunctional single mothers so they will allow their children to play football because they know that that's where their pipeline is. Every now and then, you'll see a college athlete with both his parents up there and the kid's successful. You'll see that. But the lion's share of the NFL's draft picks are coming, which are black, are coming from dysfunctional households. And they want that pipeline to remain open to get these superhumans to continue to dance and perform and play football on Sundays and Saturdays, Monday nights and Thursday nights. Michael trying to get into heaven. That's why the show Wire, it was actually shows how mom tried to benefit from her son being in the streets hustling, and the dad understood and had to get him out of that environment. The Wire was one of the realest shows ever. It was one of the best shows, in my opinion, ever to come on television. Brandon, she walked off the stage. That shit hurt me. I mean, it's once again, we as a society do not like to hold women accountable. One mother got up and left the signing once her son went against her wishes. Once again, lack of support. Like Emmitt Smith's son just signed and he got a scholarship to Stanford. And Emmitt hugged his son, his mother hugged his son. Emmitt went to Florida, and Florida was one of the schools. And, you know, the ESPN reporters was like, there's something like Stanford. Stanford is almost an Ivy League school. It's held in high esteem. So, and it's just interesting that their football team has become really good. Aaron V, I can only imagine the damage my ex-wife is doing to my two sons. Hey man, you got to step in there and break that up. What's up, Money Mike? So one of the things that happens, and this is a critical part of success, is feeling that you are worthy of success. Feeling that you are entitled to success, because when you have a parent that abuses you or you have a parent that does these things, it makes you feel not entitled to be successful. I hope these guys have a backup plan because there's more to life to play football. Well, hey, if it works out, it works out well. I wonder if that motivated the brother who resigned as an NFL player making $29 million a year to become a farmer. You never know. I thought that was an interesting story. Ron, some people are ignorant and don't know how to do better. I'm the one that complete reprogramming after understanding the power of info to change my mind and behaviors, resulting in change life. That is something that I went through as well. That is something, because after going through therapy, after getting on this path of self-education and reprogramming, my life literally changed. Alex C., absent fathers is another form of abuse. Absolutely. When I was 13 years old, my mama wanted me to be a gifted genius instead of a gifted athlete. That's cool. My cousin Doug Baldwin went to Stanford. Stanford has become an academic as well as a athletic powerhouse. So one of the reasons that we're having this conversation is to have an understanding of the cause and the effect of why so many people are living this lower. Because one of the things I found out when I was homeless was that many people who are homeless have mental issues because it's just not normal to stay in that situation for years. If you meet some person who's homeless for years, there's a mental problem. And I didn't have any mental problems, and that's why I sought to get a living accommodation very shortly. And then after, and I kept pushing and kept pushing because I knew I could do better. But one of the problems that you have with the lower economic class is these bad pathologies, abusive parents, and poor choices. I was watching this special the other night that was talking about basketball players going to Mexico to play in these leagues to hopefully get picked up by a European league. And it's just was really sad to see that these grown men had invested so much into this sport. Because one guy, he couldn't make it in Mexico, he had to come back, and he was working as a mechanic, making $385 per week, which is like less than $1,600 per month. And he was talking about both his checks went to his kids, and it wasn't enough. And the mother was on him, and it was just so many bad pathologies there. So, if you were one of those people who grew up in a dysfunctional household, know that you can be successful, know that you deserve success, know that success is possible regardless of what your mom or dad may have told you as a child. You can be successful. You can have a great life. You can meet someone and have a happy family. It's a choice. It's a determination. Because, these bad pathologies, this dysfunction, if you do not change it, your children will inherit it, and then their kids will inherit it, and their kids will inherit it. So, with that, I'll see you guys later.